Hello, I wasn't actually going to record more, but because actually this is the point that you're seeing now is maybe 2, 3 hours after the end of my last video, so it's like the same day. But I feel like I'm about to make some cool moves. I really wanted to work on my project because anytime I have any kind of sad mood, like it just makes me feel better. So I just wanted to work on it some more. So, but I'm fixing up my projects tab because I was like, okay, maybe now it's time to like get it a little bit more like set in stone so I don't have to keep switching up chats and stuff. And yeah, I'm gonna ask it some like we're gonna start making some like quick switches, I guess. Here you can see what I was crying about. Actually, this was the end of my crash out because I was like, sometimes I think the world is crazy and maybe I'm not too crazy, you know? I'm a little crazy, but like I don't think I'm as crazy as I think I am sometimes. Yeah. So, anyways, I'm setting up some new project, like my project section. I'm trying to figure out how to do that. It's funny because I feel like every single day I'm having a really triggering conversation. I don't know if it's because like I had like one conversation and then that like made me feel a little bit more like vulnerable. And it's like every single day, it's like with a different person at a different time. I'm having like a really like confronting conversation about like certain elements of myself. Not like people are confronting me, but it's like it keeps like touching on certain stuff. And it's like, but it's interesting because it's alongside me working on this project. So, or like getting to the end of it. I don't know. I have this mentality where I'm like, sometimes I feel like the world starts triggering you when you're about to make like a breakthrough in something in your life. I know that sounds crazy. Well, crazy but smart people, right? I feel like it's like it almost like okay, I'm getting deeper and deeper and deeper inside myself for a while and like releasing things until I can get to like the root. Does that make sense? I don't know. I have like a lot of little like laws of the universe. Sometimes, okay, obviously I went through mental health struggles myself, but I will say sometimes I think the world treating me like I was crazy about certain things made me even more mentally unwell. Does that make sense? Like I feel like sometimes like the society made me unwell like quite a bit as well. I'm like I wasn't even crazy about certain stuff, but because like I was being treated like crazy, I felt I got sicker, because I felt like I felt so invalidated and I felt so like not okay that I got sicker because I feel like I wasn't feeling like listened to. And there was like, then I was like, I felt so wrong. That's been like the theme as I actually get into the last part of this project. It's so random. I'm gonna ask ChatGPT to make it's gonna have 12 rats for each like arousal type. The thing is that also I feel like people like society is always like it's already pre-made to sort of treat women like crazy. So when you get like mentally ill, like when you get like mental health symptoms plus experience of being a woman plus being a survivor where like people want to do anything to validate men plus being a smart person, it seems. Oh my God, it's the worst. I feel like it's just power combo for feeling absolutely delusional 24/7. But I was like, I have to either believe myself or go off the deep end mentally like 100%. Those are my two options, you know? I feel like the world already wants to think that men are really, really smart. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you're a guy, you can come up with the stupidest idea ever. Like people already they want to see you as smart. Like people want male intelligent people. If you're a girl, sucks to suck. I feel like people don't want to see you as smart at all. So not everybody, but you know what I mean, like society, whatever. Like people are already pre-wired to see you as absolutely delusional. Even if you weren't mentally ill in the first place, which I was for a period of time, even if you didn't have mental health issues, the world is already pre-wired to see you as delusional. Like right off the bat, from the minute you were born a woman, the world wants to see you as delusional. So from that point on, it's just you're just downhill from there. I actually want to see more representation of women who went through periods of severe mental health issues because I don't see them a lot, and it's usually men that I see. Okay, this one seems much smaller than the last, so I might have missed up something. If you're a girl, it's honestly like it feels like embarrassing to call yourself smart because it feels like you're like too full of yourself, you know? Like girls aren't supposed to be full of themselves like that. You're not supposed to say that you're pretty or see yourself as pretty. You're not supposed to see yourself as smart or say that you're smart, you know? Other people are supposed to say it to you. You're not supposed to be aware of your own intelligence nor of your own beauty. I feel like I was supposed to after like surviving and then after going through like a sort of justice system setting where people didn't believe me, I feel like I was supposed to go on with my day having low self-esteem and hating myself forever. Because if I didn't hate myself forever, of course I was gonna fight back. You know what I mean? Like if you walk away and you still love yourself and you still believe yourself and all these things, like obviously you're gonna keep fighting, right? But the way the system is set up too, they don't want you to keep fighting. There's retaliation policies, confidentiality agreements, all these different things. You're supposed to just walk away with like your tail between your legs and like you're supposed to walk away in shame. You're not supposed to do anything about it. So I guess I was expected to just have a low self-esteem for the rest of my life and just hate myself forever and see myself as like a blind idiot, you know? That's like the expectation, you know? It's like, okay, you're done now. Never show your face again. I was also thinking about the fact, I was thinking this on the plane ride home. I think the fact that, especially my school was a very, very nice school. I think the fact that the Title IX systems and like just those kinds of systems, they value making sure that they obviously, so many people say that they're not satisfied, that their stories weren't heard, everything, right? You know why the school is so much more okay letting down their female survivors and they are actually going through with something that men did, like, and actually giving them some kind of punishment? It's because they feel like they're much more guaranteed good alumni from a man. That's what I think. They're guaranteed a good alumni who's going to go off. He already has power in society. He's going to go off and get a good job, come back, give donations to the school. The girls, they're expecting to never hear from us again. They're not expecting powerful alumni of women, I think. So, or at least if it is, it's by happy accidents, like a coincidence, right? So it's a much better risk when you think about it, mathematically speaking. It's a much better risk to take to disrupt the career, like the academic career, the mental health of a woman, because they're less likely in the eyes of a school to become a powerful alumni who's going to come back and shower them with donations, right? Like the girls aren't going to be big names except by accident. And if does happen by accident, it's most likely to not be one of their survivors, right? Like they can take the risk because they believe, well, okay, the survivors will go through, they'll be extremely mentally crushed, and then we'll never hear from them again, right? So just overall a better risk to take as a university. I think in every university context. Most of us girls just, fade away after university time, right? Think about it. You don't want a pissed off alum out there, right? So it's better to just, not piss off the men. Okay, and with that in mind, let's run my 12 rats. All right, here we go. It should be running 12 rats. Actually, should be running 24 rats in reality. And that's why I never forgot about the issue. I didn't go walk away and was like, I'm going to start a new life. I'm going to forget about it, forget the whole thing, just ignore it. It doesn't matter. You don't want to get stuck on it. I'll get stuck on it because at the end of the day, like, I'm not going to walk away with my head held in shame. You know what I mean? That's exactly what we're expected to do. We're just expected to walk away and like be like, oh man, well, that's reality. That's why they make you sign all those retaliation policies and stuff. When I was at school and I first got like the results, I guess, of that whole thing, I tried to hold it in as much as I can. I cried it out so bad at first, like I cried so bad. And my friends were there, and then obviously I cried it out with them a bit, and then I didn't want to be like, too bummed out, but I was like torn into a million pieces. I was horribly crushed. It was like so sad for me, and all I could do for days was just cry and cry, like sob and cry. And I thought, at one point I was so upset. I thought, I'm gonna like, why am I crying in this room? Everybody should be knowing this. Like, I was like, it was in the middle of final season too. So I was like, I'm gonna go. Obviously, I didn't do it, but there's this brief moment where it's like, I'm crying here in private, but it's like, why should everybody not be 100% bothered and frustrated by my emotions right now? Like, why should everybody else be like given like the safety of like the convenience of like just quiet and just a normal life and all these things, and I'm here having my world torn to pieces in the middle of final season. And I thought, why am I crying in my room? I'm gonna go to the library. I'm gonna just like, if I'm gonna cry, I might as well do it there, and I'll disrupt everybody in the middle of final season. Like, it'll be performance art. Like, I'll just cry and cry and cry and cry because I was crying so hard, like every day. Obviously, I held myself back because I was like, well, I don't want to do that, and like I don't want to get in trouble. And obviously, like then I'm in an emotionally vulnerable spot. It was obviously like in the midst of that moment, it was just like a moment of anger. but I just was just crying, crying, crying. I was so angry, and I was like, everybody just like everybody should know this. Like everybody should feel the depth of like my pain and my suffering and how bad I'm hurting right now. Because like it doesn't make sense for people to not understand how bad it is. And I thought everything. I was like, I'll write an article. Like I was like, I have to do something because this is so unfair and this is so stupid. And like obviously I can't share the details, but there were so many details that I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous. This is not okay at all. Things that were said, or like just so many details that I was like, this is absolutely horrible. And but obviously there was a retaliation policy and stuff, and I was in like a vulnerable situation. But I walked away and I was like F no, like I'm not gonna sit here, I'm not gonna live my life with my tail between my legs, like, you know, like a dog. Like I'm not gonna walk away and that's gonna be my life story. Absolutely not. So that's when I was like, I don't, I was like, I was not in psychology at all. I was not a neuroscientist, nothing. I was like, I will do this. I was writing a paper and I was reading about dissociative disorders, reading about this issue somewhere else. I was like, I will do the science. I will learn it myself and I will figure it out because this is absolutely horrendous and this is disgusting that anybody should get away with it. I thought, you know what? If there's science for this, at the very least, they can't get away with saying it. You know what I mean? I was like, if there's science to back me up, at the very least, like you never ever ever can anybody say this stupid BS again. That was my thought process. That's why like every single day I work on this, okay? And I love it. I enjoy it so much. It's brought me into my deepest like love of my life. I absolutely love neuroscience so much and I love doing these computational models. It's genuinely been like I'm so grateful that I was led here. It feels like a gift. But yeah, I was like, absolutely. That's why, like, you will not see me like not work on this for a day because I literally, I'm like, I will not live in a world without this. I will not live in a world without this. And like, nobody can make me live in a world without this. You know what I mean? If there's something I can do where I just put in the work every day and the output is that this goes away, I will do the work every single day until this goes away. No lie. I never gave up on it. I kept working on it. Obviously, I feel happy in my life. I don't actually think about the event that much. I don't think about this trial that much, but I feel like sometimes every once in a while, like it comes up and just the absolute frustration of feeling like you are speaking your truth and like people are just, it's just awful, honestly. But yeah, that's why I'm like, I am so motivated. I'm like, literally, like, there's nobody making me do this. No assignment, like, no grade, no nothing. This is just pure, like, unadulterated passion of being like, I literally, like, nobody's requiring me to live in a world without this. I can literally create a world without this and I can make it myself. And nobody can stop me. You know what I mean? Like, there's nobody on God's green earth that can stop this from going away from me. That's my, been my thought process with this. Okay, do you guys want to see so far? So far, we're on medium rat 5, and it's going on to high rat 5, so high arousal rat. And it's pretty interesting. You can see the like sort of randomness coming through. So the medium rats, they have 7 sharp wave ripples, 8, 8, 6, 7. But the high arousal rats still just have 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. None of them have made it down low enough to get to that hit that threshold. I'm actually really wanting to see what it would look like with I essentially started writing down what almost like my conclusion. So what I think, basically my thoughts on how I'm going to sort of frame these findings. I haven't included this yet, but obviously if the threshold once I set it to like 10 hours, I'm assuming that eventually the ripples will start forming again. Like eventually it has to get back down to that baseline. I want to make sure, like, I'm going to go back and make sure that this is accurate to the thresholds and things that I was hitting in the paper. Because I think some of the rats should have gotten down to like 1.15 or something within that frame time, like sort of space. But maybe that still just wasn't enough to make, I don't know. Anyways, but obviously, like, if I get it like a 10-hour window and after some time it starts to get sharp wave ripples, that most likely means that they're once the acetylcholine went down, they started to recover like consolidate the memory, but later than the other group. So basically I did start writing on the way back. Basically my theory coming from my personal life, but what I'm going to try to sort of talk about, I think, is that obviously this is just in rats, right? But humans are even more complex than rats. So for humans, sometimes like, okay, the rat, like obviously it's impacted, but the human, like humans, like we can feel like we're literally reliving things and things like that, right? We develop a whole new relationship to the world and a change in the perception of the world and perception of risk in the world. So like, let's say you were raped, all of a sudden you see like men and all of them seem like they could potentially be rapists, right? So you start to change the way that you perceive the world in ways that are more arousing than the average person. And my thinking is that if there's a trigger that's really stressful, that every time that you're around that trigger, it provokes that heightened arousal feeling, then maybe it's just continuously creating like you're continuously lacking windows of opportunity to consolidate. I'm still thinking that through, but that's my thinking with PTSD. Until this is a thing is that so I wrote as this isn't how I'm going to write it in the end, but this evokes the question if a stressor is highly triggering and provokes high arousal every time it's confronted, as is the case with PTSD, the individual may never reach a point of acetylcholine low enough to consolidate the memories until a window of opportunity is reached over time. So this may either be through working through the stressor in therapy until the overall hyperarousal is diminished, or through a feeling that one has quote unquote escaped the stressor enough to reach that consolidation window. So basically, over time, the goal is to get people into that consolidation phase, which is quiet wakefulness or non-REM sleep. So I wrote it may be that humans become averse to consolidation related phases through hypervigilance, thus avoiding quiet wakefulness, or insomnia, thus avoiding non-REM sleep, right? Because usually people with PTSD either like you're like on high alert all the time to the point where it's like you feel like you can't relax. A lot of people with PTSD will become like, for example, workaholics, where you're always working, right? And so there's always this something to be done to sort of avoid sitting with your feelings or avoid just resting, relaxing, because then you end up through that you avoid that quiet wakefulness period. Or a lot of people with PTSD develop insomnia or have sleep problems. So I was thinking that it could be like basically that your body is sort of averse to entering that non-REM sleep consolidation period. So that period of time where your mind starts to consolidate things. Or once you start entering that period, you can't ever sleep that well because like things become arousing, stuff like that. That's sort of my thinking. I'm still working through that idea. So I said high ACH then becomes a useful biological strategy for confronting integration of the stressor. So your body learns to evoke higher arousal to avoid the consolidation period because it doesn't want to consolidate and integrate things into your memory. So it creates an arousing sort of environment for you. I was basically saying that in my paper, so it obviously looked at trauma that though what was inescapable was a singular trauma. So they were in the trauma for 15 minutes, but they obviously after a while they were gone and then that was it. But I thought that over time, so further studies on continuous extended raises in acetylcholine through exposure to stressors so may provide more information on that particular neurobiology, the neurobiology of CPTSD or dissociative identity disorder. That's my thinking. I was having a lot of thought processes today about acetylcholine and how even something like, well, I'm not going to say it yet. I need to do the research, but I do think it's probably really tied that way. Okay, I went to bed and let all of the rats basically load themselves up because it was very late last night. And I woke up to something very exciting, which I'm going to show you guys. Okay, here we go. All the rats. And then it gave like a little list. What's very interesting is that near the end, some of the lower numbers, so like 3, 4, 5, even so, the mean was still 6.17, median was 7. Okay. Meanwhile, the high group had 0, like 0 all the way through. Look at this. So there was like this massive variety of things going on in the sharpwave ripple group. And then the high arousal group didn't have anything. So I am going to have a 10-hour consolidation arousal too, which I think is going to be in this video so that we can see. I want to reasonably say that it's not some kind of error in the high arousal group and that later on they do start consolidating if given the time. It's just that they don't consolidate at all within the first scope of time. Let me tell my quote unquote advisor, my ChatGPT advisor, because I do not have an advisor. It's crazy. This is actually like just a genuine thing that's happening now and not just a, oh my God, I want to do this, but like maybe I'm crazy. It's like, no, I'm actually doing it. Like this is happening and it's right here. You know what I'm saying? Okay. The reviewer says there's several issues. The rate in the medium is highly variable, meaning the detector might not be stable. Well, what I'm going to do and what I'm going to say, because the advisor likes it. Obviously, the advisors, I'm like, okay, like this is like a longer path of work that you're doing. The reviewer is like, promising not sufficient. I'm going to do more still. I'm going to do a 10, like I said, I'm going to do a 10-hour group to see if they get ripples later on. And then I understand the variability issue. That's something I might ask ChatGPT about. I'm obviously going to run this more times. I want to understand, so you should benchmark your detected ripple frequency and duration distribution against empirical hippocampal data, not just report counts. Okay. Basically, it's saying that there's something a little bit like sort of off that might be underproducing ripples. I'd rather it produce more ripples personally. Like even the higher group, none of them produced any ripples. I think that some of them, like I want some of them to produce maybe one, like maybe one of them get to that degree. If they don't, they don't. Because obviously I'm gonna run that second group that has more time. But I'm gonna talk to ChatGPT about that and see if that's something in my code. Because obviously from the last video, I was having trouble getting the ripples to ripple at all. So something was not strong enough. So it took me quite a while to get it to the point where it's making like 8 ripples, 6 ripples. So I need to compare it to I just need to compare everything to actual like science, like, measured hippocampal data to see if it's in line with data that's already like existing essentially. I basically need to make my stuff a little bit more complicated. I think that at the moment it's at a level that I can sort of comprehend, but it needs to be at like a higher like some almost like better terminology. You get me? Like it like produces these little tables. Like it made this itself, which is so nice for me. I don't have to do it. So I just need to ask it to make all of those different things that I'm wanting as well. But it's not bad. Like it's the difference between the sharp wave ripple goose hunt that I went on and then today is like massive. So I'm probably going to work on this later today, but I'm going to go get breakfast and stuff for now. Currently looking very eggish because I'm oiling my hair, but I'm going to start fixing some of the minute details of my neural network right now. And I'm also going to start writing down some of the points I'm planning on making in my paper just to have like a loose sort of list, All right, so we're gonna make a checklist. There's this dude on there's this dude who went through this phase on my YouTube. The only reason I didn't block him from commenting is that he left something that was misogynistic but extremely important on one of my posts, and I wanted to keep it up. It was my one about channeling feminine rage or something to science. And I haven't taken him off because I'm like I want to keep that one up even though it was like negative. But he wouldn't comment much on other YouTube videos, but he would comment on the ones where I talked about my story as a survivor. I would delete the comments after because I was like, I usually don't delete comments, but I'm like, I'm here to like be brave with my story and like I'm not really here to be harassed or sort of put down for doing something important, and I don't have to see that on my space. But he used to comment like he went through a phase where he was commenting on my videos. And like one time I was talking about like a lived experience and I was talking about amnesic leakage. And how I had one I related I was reading those case studies because I remember how I had moments like that before I was able to fully recover my memories or things sort of just would have these anxiety attacks, right? I talked about how one time I had this anxiety attack after somebody tried to like sort of come on to me. And this was like the summer after everything. I was like, felt like I started having like this like this anxiety attack around the concept, like, you never said no, you never said no. I couldn't put it together then, but I got mentally unwell again, right? And I was reading case studies that it was really validating to me because I was reading of other people who had a similar experience within the context of the science experiment. And he commented underneath, he just said, "You never said no." And he would comment on my page like
quite often, only when I spoke about this story. I don't know if he got really bothered by the fact that I had this conversation with him, or he was trying to act like I should be nicer to men. But in the first comment he ever commented on that I kept up so people could like engage with it, or so that like, people could learn from it. Basically, he commented something like, "Well, do you think you would have felt better if this guy had been expelled?" And he commented that like again. He commented multiple times, like sort of like, would it be better if this person had gotten expelled? Sort of like just like what would that even do as a like what would that even do for people to actually have somebody have like a consequence? I just thought that was such an insane thing to comment. And like, yes, it would be better for the safety of the schools as well. This is the thing, is that soon after this person, like after this trial went down, this person had gotten this sort of like um consequence, but was still allowed to be on the school campus with like very minimal sort of changes to his daily life, essentially, actually really none. We have this event on my school campus where people could basically have, it was like undergrad kids that were going to be undergrad students, like minors, could basically come and visit the school and stay with the students. I did that too myself. I stayed with a student for a weekend, right? And then you get to see the school and everything. And my friends, this was after he'd already gotten like a consequence, technically speaking. Like he was on academic probation. And basically my friends went to pick up one of the kids that they were staying on the campus with them for this event. And they went down there and he was picking up a kid. Basically, he was picking up an underage student, a high school student, to come stay in his room for the weekend for this event. And I thought, how absolutely insane that not only did this person get the most lightest of punishments after I threw 2 years of my life into this, but now he is allowed. There's like, because of confidentiality stuff, there was no reason, like they can't even really say to those school event people like, oh, here's a list of students that are on academic probation for this. So he was about to pick up an underage student to stay in his room for the weekend. And I just think, how dangerous is that? How absolutely dangerous for us to not listen to survivors to that degree, and then to then create unsafe environments for other people. And that was so triggering to me. And luckily my friend was there. She knew what happened. She went and spoke to like an event coordinator, was like, hey, he's on academic probation. He shouldn't be like allowed to have the student, like it's not safe. And I guess it didn't go through. But I just think how awful. And I just like, yeah, I can't even go into detail, but it's like, how absolutely horrible. And it just like, yeah, it would be better for people to be expelled because it would be better for the safety of the school as well. How unsafe. Do you want your minor student? How unsafe to send your minor student to the school for a weekend, and to think that they could be sitting in a room with somebody who committed such horrible violence to me, and that I've spent 2 years of my life trying to get him at an actual consequence. How absolutely horrible. I'm sorry, but I was like, absolutely yes, it would be better if students were expelled for that. Well, how is that keeping anybody safe? That's the thing that really makes me like confused. All right, here's one thing I'm tackling in my paper. Okay. The trauma model people, essentially they talk about this effect and dissociation, where basically the dissociation fades over time while being stronger at the time of the trauma. The fantasy model people basically have no like reason as to why that would happen. This is not going to be in order. These are just things I want to talk about, and I'm going to like sort of I want to make sure that I touch on in my paper. The other thing, I was just looking at this paper, but this is actually another paper on foot shocks and rats, which is, I'm looking at foot shocks and rats. But basically, they weren't as affected in the beginning. There's like a sort of like delayed response, okay? Where the rats, they were not as impacted in the beginning, but over time, they started having like trauma symptoms, essentially, after these foot shocks. And the my paper is also on foot shock, but they don't look that far into the response. And then also, I also read this one about arousal, where essentially the low arousal people, they were able to remember things better in the beginning, while high arousal words were not as recalled as instantly, but a week later they were recalled at 40% amount. which could be because of that high arousal, like the high arousal goes down, which I think if I can show that with like a 10-hour time window in my neural network and show that over time they get more sharp wave ripples, that would be like a pointer, right? I was actually given an option through Title IX. Okay. I think this is probably just like the norm to have like a restorative option, a restorative justice option. Basically, what that means, well, let's go into restorative justice just a touch. I'm not even like, I'm not well read, but rather than just giving somebody a punishment, we should, things can be resolved through conversation. And I was offered that before going into an actual trial. Like, do I want to do a restorative justice option? This is the thing, is that I want to believe really badly in restorative justice, like in the long run. But I will say that it's really difficult because I feel like survivors have been like one of the main people to bear that weight of that conversation of like we should be engaging in restorative justice. And it's really hard to sort of put the burden on survivors to be the ones to jump for that immediately and to have these like difficult conversations with people who raped them, sexually assaulted them, where it's like we never got people having consequences in the first place. Do you know what I mean? We've never actually had anybody getting consequences. So it just feels like a cop out to be like, okay, you're going to have this in-depth conversation with the person who harmed you, and like you have to bear that emotional, like, do you know what I mean? It's such an emotional almost like an emotional labor to put on survivors to have this conversation with people where like we don't have like a societal framework to really like encompass that fully. So I was like having a conversation with this person, like they can BS their way through it and pretend like they care, and then like they're just off the hook forever. Meanwhile, like of all of the crimes in the world, I feel like survivors and like victims of rape, sexual abuse, sexual assault, we have never actually had the consequences in the first place. So it's not like, for example, something like petty crime, like, okay, like theft, oh, go and have a conversation with the person you stole from and tell them you're sorry. And like, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, people have gotten in trouble for theft for quite a while. So it's like, okay, it's okay to make that transition, but it's a really big ask of survivors. And I feel like survivors are often the first one to be thrown into the restorative justice conversation, where it's like, I would rather see people get actual punishments first because people have never gotten those punishments in the first place, and then we can have that conversation later. But it just felt so like it almost felt a little bit like gross to be asked that. And I know it's like a good intention, but I was like, it felt a little bit gross. Like, absolutely no, I don't want to have a conversation with this person. Like, I want you to actually do something for me, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, no, 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 no. And I'm a big like, I'm big into reading about that kind of stuff. I think like in the long run, I'd probably be into the idea of restorative justice, but I was like, right away, this our society does not have a framework that would actually require men to have like a genuine sit with their emotions and then move through the world in like a better way. I just don't believe that that would happen because there's already no consequences. So you're just giving people like a no consequence anyways. Like they barely get a slap on the wrist. So when I heard restorative justice, I was like, don't like do not put that weight on me right now. Like I don't want to have a conversation with somebody. Like no. It just felt like being asked to give up something that I'd never had in the first place. You know what I mean? It's like we've never had it in the first place. Now you're asking me to give it up and like trying to I feel like throw people into like a sort of a conversation that like nobody is even, you know what I mean? Like I don't think it's a bad thing for us to strive for, but it's like survivors should not be the one, like should not be the first to put our like justice or like our consequences on the line where people have never had those consequences to begin with. And that's how I felt when that person started commenting in my YouTube thing. And obviously, he was not a leftist in the slightest, and he was not coming at it from that intention, anyways. But he was like, do you really think it would be better if this person got a consequence? Like, would that actually make you happier? And it's like, that's so weird of you to comment that. And like, yes, I actually would be happier, to be honest with you, because it would mean that people are actually seeing like the mental health toll that this took on me is something that I genuinely grapple with so much. It made me like it genuinely impacted me mentally in ways that I can't even like explain. And it completely threw off my life, completely threw off my academic career. It stripped me of having like these amazing years at the school that I worked so hard to get into. Like I worked my entire high school career to get in. And then I was like traumatized, left with the grief of feeling like my school didn't care after I worked so hard to like I went in with this intention of wanting to have school spirit. I love my school. I wanted to be proud. And I graduated feeling like this, like hurt, like, oh, this is all fake and I hate this. And it's like the weight that it took from me, you know what I mean? The weight of like, of suffering in my life, like it added so much suffering in my life. And it's like, absolutely, yes, I do think that people should get expelled and they should get suspended because like my life is just as valuable. My academic career is just as valuable as like a man as well. And like my mental health and sanity is just as valuable. Like I was like, the school sees me as completely invaluable to them. I was like, clearly they don't think that like my life is worth it, or they don't think my mental health toll is worth it. Like they don't even think that I'm worth the money of actually getting people in the process that are actually mentally, like mental health trained, trauma informed. It was such an emotionally violent experience. And it's just like, absolutely, I think people should get consequences. And I'm not a big person that's like, oh, like I'm not super into like prisons or anything like that. But I think like the weight of that conversation should not be thrown onto survivors at all, because we have never had that. And like particularly for us, I think it's so emotionally complicated because obviously, like for example, there's reasons that people end up stealing. There's reasons people end up, being like murderers and stuff. I'm not saying, but at the same time, like I think that there's a really specific context to why people rape, and I think that that's very much like the context of like the gendered context of our society. And it's something that's like really inescapable, and it's like really impacted, I think, the personalities of men and the way that they navigate the world. And obviously women do it too, but I think like it is very heavily like 1 in 4 women have been, I think the statistic is 1 in 4 women have been raped or sexually assaulted after the age of 16. And it's like that number is insane. And I think there's clearly like a societal context to it. And it's like, I don't know, it just feels like obviously like I think that it's really sort of complicated to imply that there's some sort of like, oh, it's like an interpersonal issue, or like there's like some kind of psychological context, like, oh well, they had a hard life or something, where I can see that like for people who kill, for people who steal, it's like, okay, people who steal, maybe they didn't have like enough resources around them, for example. Or people who kill, like maybe they're suffering with some kind of mental health issue, or maybe they you know what I mean. I understand that. But when it comes to rape and sexual assault, it is so prevalent in a gendered way. It is such a gendered issue. It's really hard to think that we're gonna cycle. I mean, I do think that that can happen, but I think it's very complicated to like have us be the first to sort of make that jump. And I don't think that like, for example, like was a restorative justice option given to the people at my school that were protesting Palestine, like the genocide in Palestine. It wasn't. They were immediately expelled, no questions asked, immediately expelled. Did they get a restorative justice option? No, they didn't. So why are you throwing a restorative justice option at me? Like I need to be the one to have some kind of, I need to put myself on the line and get in front of somebody who triggered me emotionally to have a restorative justice conversation with them. Meanwhile, where was the restorative justice conversation for the people in the encampments? There wasn't any. Do you want to have a deep conversation with them and then let them go? You don't. So why are we the ones to have that sort of thrown in our face? And then I had to sit with like this guilt of like, oh, should I be like having this conversation with somebody who gave me this awful trauma? And then it's like, absolutely not, I shouldn't. Absolutely not, I shouldn't. And yeah, it was just also when the protest time came around, like obviously there was like a massive protest issue at my school. And granted, it was complicated, but definitely at the beginning, it was not complicated to that degree. And it was such a slap in the face to be like, I put 2 years in my life into a trial for somebody to get a slap on the wrist, to get on academic probation, which is nothing actually in reality. And then to see people who are just expressing like, freedom of speech, all of a sudden they're getting expelled and getting their degrees revoked. How grateful would I have been to see this person get their degree revoked, or have to see this person get expelled? Like that would have made a world of difference for my healing. So like I have to leave the school mentally unwell, and now I'm seeing all these kids who are just trying to do something for a genocide. All of a sudden you're taking their degrees and expelling them. I was like, that is a slap in the face. And it just speaks to the value that school sees of like their female students. Like me as a female student is worthless to them in comparison to like the trustees. It's like, oh, okay, that's cool. So anyways, okay, so I'm gonna add here that I also want to make that connection between consolidation and PTSD symptoms. So hyperarousal, and then we have insomnia. obviously it's not exactly like this, but I just think that these things are definitely being hampered by like our like by high arousal. Anyways, I think that's kind of like almost that's I feel like that's the what's the word? The hypocrisy of these quote unquote liberal institutions where it's like, first of all, they market themselves to students that are extremely what? Like socially active, politically active, students that want to make a difference, students that have big ideas, radical ideas, new ideas, because it's like, oh, they'll benefit from that. And they really sell themselves to students like that. And the students that I met at school, obviously everyone wasn't perfect. There were some cray people there. I don't know what was going on with that, but a lot of the students that I met cared so much, particularly as a low income student. My fellow low income students were like so politically active and like they just cared so much as well and were so incredibly intelligent and all that. And that's the kind of they want students that are gonna engage with big ideas. And then once the students actually start engaging with big ideas or actually start being like frustrated or actually like act in liberal ways, they're not into it anymore. That's what I think is the irony. Like once they actually start act, it's like what did you think was going to happen? That's the type of student that you advertise to. That's why I'm here in the first place. Now all of a sudden when we're actually trying to do something, you're trying to shut it down and you're not into it. It doesn't make any sense. And like on the subject of like the fake liberalism of these institutions, it's like also like just the idea that they would sort of offer along this restorative justice option, which is like the super like sort of leftist idea of like this the future of sort of justice and how do we create these systems of care. And it's like just the irony of like offering that up as an option and sort of almost like using this little like woke code. And then it's like but not actually engaging in a way that actually like exemplifies these values at all. So they're always kind of like woke coding, but it's like they don't actually act quote unquote woke at all once you get into the situations. Like when they say, they throw out like, oh, restorative justice, all this stuff. It's like you're not facilitating an environment that would exemplify what restorative justice is all about at your institution in the slightest. So it's all just to gaslight the liberal students, gaslight us girls, all of us people, whatever, who are trying to actually go in and try to do something. It's like it's all a lie. And that's the thing is they just use it as this massive advertising, like this marketing tactic to get students that are really smart. That's the thing because students like us who are very like liberal minded students whatever who like have these new ideas different ideas want to expand on things and are into stuff like oh restorative justice whatever. It's like obviously they know that students like that are really like intellectually engaged that are willing to do something new are willing to have interesting discussions all these different things. And it's like obviously they want that and they want the benefit of that and they want the benefit of students who are going to make the school look good. But it's like do you actually want to do like you're not actually going to reflect any of that back. You know what I mean? They just want you to produce for them. Particularly when it comes to, for me, because I was a humanities student at first. They want you to produce that kind of wokey speak stuff. Like, and this is me, I'm not saying wokey speak because I don't like also enjoy it, but it's like they want you to have that sort of like create academia, sort of academic work that's going to exemplify that. Particularly for me as a comparative literature student, the kind of stuff we were writing was extremely like I mean, some of my peers wrote extremely interesting, like, these sort of massive, like, cultural sort of analyses and all these different things. They want you to write that stuff, but they don't actually want to live up to the standard of people writing that stuff. Do you know what I mean? They want to be on the cutting edge when it comes to ideas like that, but they don't actually want to, they're going to pretend to use those ideas, but they're not actually going to live up to the ideas in the slightest. It's really disgusting, honestly. It's such a lie. Like that's what I was like, wow. When I was leaving school, I was like, this is disgusting. I was like, this is an absolute lie that they sold us, and I'm like, it's so fake. It's all just marketing. Because obviously they're a company. That's the thing, is like I think I went in like I don't think that I fully realized how much a university is just a company. And we are products too. Like we are the products. You know what I'm saying? Like they're selling us and they're selling like our minds and they're selling like do you know what I mean? We are like the product for the school for people to like give money. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's really crazy. Okay, let me tell you guys now, sciencey speaking, what the issue is I'm having with my thing. I just want to make sure that all of the parts of my code are actually accurate to what's going on in the experiment, because let me show you. So I think I showed earlier in the video the results from my little 5 hour mark. So the neural network actually expanded the consolidation window into like, a few seconds, but what would be the equivalent of 5 hours. And then I actually did get sharp wave ripples. But the thing is that I was like, okay, run a 10-hour one because I want to see if sharp wave ripples are made later on. Oh, it disappeared. Okay, I think I deleted it. But it started to run it, but I was getting significantly more sharp wave ripples for the medium stress group, but I wasn't getting more waves for the high arousal group. And I think that's because ChatGPT assumed that the acetylcholine should stay the same throughout the rest of the experiment. But it's like, no, it should be getting lower. So I think there's something a little bit off, and I just want to make sure that's right. So we're going to explain a little bit. Also, I just want to mention that this is the exact same this is the exact same school that literally had somebody like a gynecologist essentially in working since the 70s. We're having countless people accuse him of sexual abuse, and then they continue to let him work for decades, and finally ended up having to pay $1 billion payout to all the victims. Okay, I just want to tell that story too because that's insane. Like that is just like the lack of consideration for safety on campus is absolutely insane too, to keep abusers around anyways. It's like it's extremely unsafe. Think, dude, if that hadn't happened, honestly it saved me, because if that hadn't happened, maybe I would have become like the kind of person who had school pride, graduated, paid to have a bunch of graduation pictures, was like, really into my school, and then I would have gotten into some, nice job. I would have returned, I would have given them, money, I would have made donations, I would have sent my children there. So honestly, it saved me from that at the very least. At least it opened my eyes. Better put my money where it's actually in good use and actually worth the money. Okay, so I basically just asked it. So what it was doing was that, like I was saying, I'm pretty sure that it wasn't okay. So the acetylcholine went down in the first hour to like, I don't know, like 1.3 or something, which isn't, it's still not low enough for sharp wave ripples to happen, which is what I want slash what I was expecting. But before, it had, because I wasn't getting sharp wave ripples at all at first, because of basically the strength of my computational model is not as strong as a real rat brain. It basically expanded that 1 hour that would have been in my experiment to 5 hours in fake time. So it condensed it into like 1.5 seconds, if that makes any sense. So it made it like a bit longer so that we'd actually get ripples in the paper. But what I wanted to know is like what happens, like let's say in my experiment the acetylcholine goes down to 1.3 for the high stress rat group. I want to know at a certain point over time, in theory it should go back down to like baseline, right? It's just that it didn't go down to baseline within the hour, right? Probably would have gone down to baseline, let's imagine like 20 minutes after. It's just that it didn't condense in that hour, right? So what I want to know is like almost like imagining what would happen in the hour after the numbers in the experiment. Like let's say the ACH keeps going down. Will there be sharp wave ripples in the next hour? You know what I mean? So at some point in time, obviously they have to get sharp wave ripples again, meaning they have to start remembering again, or like not remembering, but consolidating their memory. So I want to know what happens almost in the aftermath, and then what's the ratio essentially? What's that ratio between like the memory of the sharp wave ripples versus what's the ratio of sharp wave ripples in the high arousal group and the medium arousal group? I think the school should just start like advertising itself to conservatives, and then like their problem is fixed, honestly. They should just be like conservative students only, and then like you're good. Now you solved the issue. You don't have to deal with any more issues anymore. You know what I'm saying? I think that's their problem. Stop advertising yourself to us, who you don't even actually like nor want, and then you can have an easier time. I don't know why they don't just do that. Make it male only again, honestly, at this point. If that's how you want to treat the girls, make it male only. Stop pretending like you're going to care about us, and then once our academic career is getting absolutely destroyed by some idiot on your campus, you don't even care anymore. Okay, so I think this fixed it. I'm just nervous to throw in too many issues, like too many different things. I'm a bit confused. I'm like, it extended it to 5 hours, which was great. I mean, that brought the sharp wave ripples out. but like I feel like it's a bit confused because now what I'm trying to explain to it is like, okay, that's fine if you're making it like a 1 hour equals 5 hour, like 1 hour the experiment equals like a 5 hour equivalent in my paper because that's what it needs to be. Like, sure, right? But it's like, but then why is it confused? Like, it just confused. Like, it keeps trying to like almost like diminish it again, like diminish the window again. Where I'm like, I think I'm not going to get any sharp wave ripples if you do that, unless I'm understanding it correctly. Like, I just want it to be like if you know what I'm saying. Like, if it's a ratio of 1 hour equals 5 hours in model time, then like just do the same thing, but for I don't know if that makes any sense. Is it understanding me? Oh my gosh, it seems like it's not understanding. Okay, let's see if it got it this time. I don't think it's that hard, but sometimes ChatGPT like randomly is just like, I don't understand anything anymore. It just seems like a really logical equivalent, but it's not. It's not getting it. My mom actually called me today and she watches some of my videos, but she hasn't watched all of them, obviously at all. And she hasn't watched anything related to my project because like why would like, it's kind of random. But she'll go on and watch videos sometimes. But she actually one of my first videos on this playlist of my personal project was basically about how my grandpa passed like 2 months before I started this project. She was talking to me and I was telling her about this project. I told her I finally got my first results, which she thought was really cool. And I spent like a long time explaining everything to her, explaining the ACH and the rats and everything. And we had a cool conversation. And then she actually mentioned, so I mentioned in my video, like one of my first videos about this, about my grandpa, who was extremely smart. He taught himself how to make maps. And she was actually telling me, it's cool that I just like kind of taught myself this. And she was actually telling me something that I thought was so cool. She was like, I didn't, she was actually the one to bring this up to me, but she was saying that my aunt, she was just in Sao Paulo visiting my aunt because she lives there. And my aunt, who had never learned piano before, was writing these really complex compositions. Like she had composed these songs herself and they were really like intricate. And she was like, we definitely get it all from him. I definitely think, yeah, he gave us the smart genes. He was also extremely complicated, but he definitely gave us, there's something in his DNA that gave us the smart genes for sure, because he taught himself he became a cartographer completely self-taught. And yeah, I just feel like my family's good at teaching themselves things, like my mom's side. But yeah, she was very nice. She told me that it's cool that I did this all on my own. All right. So now I I think this code is fine. I already pressed play. Let's double check that I did put this part in. I think I was a bit confused, like what this, okay, so the last line here is PLT legend. I actually have so many things that I want to learn, and I just haven't gotten to them because this project just felt like timely and like I want to finish it. Also because it's had a good impact on my mental health actually, and I want to go back to practicing the drums. I was playing drums in a band for a minute. I wasn't that good, but I feel like I learned enough for us to have a band. Like that's it. Like, you know what I mean? But I always felt like if I just put more practice into it, I could really like be like not half bad. Because I actually really liked playing the drums a lot. But I just was too busy with school to really like get into it or like get good, you know? I feel like this whole issue has been a massive weight in my life. Like I've gone into that before, but this has been really heavy because once people start acting like treating you like a liar, the mental health toll is insane. You start to think like I felt so broken inside, genuinely, like mentally broken. And it's like, it's really hard to heal from that because it's really hard to heal when you can't, like, you have no situation to validate yourself within because like society thinks you're crazy. I don't know how to put it, but it's like it's really hard getting in that situation as a survivor, and it's like it's just really hard to feel okay after that. Yeah, it honestly really broke me emotionally after, like, at first, and I felt really like not okay at all mentally. And also just all through college, obviously that was extremely traumatizing to me, and like, you know, it really impacted me for a long time, and it like set me back in a lot of ways. Like, um I always had to be like working on this on the side
I mentioned this in like one of my past videos, but like even when it wasn't a project for me, it's nice that it's a project because it almost feels like there's gonna be like an end to it. You know what I mean? And then I can let it go. Meanwhile, before it was like this constant task on the side of just learning to be okay again and feel okay, and it was really, really, really hard. Yeah, it was just really difficult. So I felt like I had to spend so much time like dealing with the impact of just feeling really emotionally broken and the ways that that impacted my mental health, the way I felt like I couldn't like be validated anywhere or like I felt like, you know what I mean? It's like it was really hard. And now I think this project has taken up a lot of my extra time because it's almost like I feel like the conclusion of this whole thing. I've literally every single day that I work on this, I feel better. Like when I found my first results yesterday and I got the 8 sharp wave ripples or whatever, I woke up today, I felt lighter. I went on a long walk, I took myself out for breakfast, I got ice cream and I just felt carefree. But I feel like I had so much baggage from school and stuff after that whole situation. It was really hard and I feel like it took away my time that I could have spent on like other things. We don't talk about that. That's the other impact of not creating space for women in our society is like just like the time toll, like it takes such a toll on like our time in life. Like that's time that was taken for me that I could have spent, or like emotional space that I could have spent actually working on my skills, like working on myself, having fun, enjoying my life. And like I spent it feeling like broken. And it's not an issue of just like, oh, just move on. Or like, you know what I mean? Like it's not an issue of like just forget about it. Cause it literally it's like it's deeper than that by so much. And it's like it's almost like it just completely like distorted my sense of self to the point where I couldn't like felt like I had a really hard time trusting myself and like all these different ways that impacted me so much. And it's like that's that extra. It's like it's like pink tax where there's like that the tax of on like tampons and stuff, or like the little extra bit of money that women have to spend just from being women. Like we're expected to look nicer, so we have to spend money on like clothes and makeup and stuff like that, right? Obviously, um, to feel like people are gonna respect us. I feel like this was like almost like a pink tax of like my time, like this pink tax of like I spent had to spend like considerable extra time dealing with the aftermath of being a survivor of rape, and it took away so much time from like my life. And then the time that it took me to go through this whole entire trial thing was like a long time. And then also like to deal with the mental impact of that, it's like a complete like you know what I'm saying? It's like it just yeah, it just feels like it was like a pink tax. And just another reason women don't get as ahead, and it's like I feel like sometimes like the the government, universities and stuff, they don't really mind like imposing that pink tax upon women. Like we can bear the weight, and it's like it sucks. Like no, I want that extra time to devote to myself that men are getting. And like I said, like I've really enjoyed this project, but it is really heavy as well. But it felt like another like pink tax of my life, but at least one that I enjoyed. That's why I was extremely mentally unwell. Like I was dealing with such bad PTSD at school, but I didn't like leave school because I was like, I don't want that pink tax on me. Like I will struggle horribly at school. I'd rather struggle horribly at school than do what all the other pink tax of my life would have been like, okay, now you take a semester off, you take a year off for mental health stuff. Also, I don't think that there are plenty of schools where if you take a semester off, like you don't get access to like university campus housing anymore. I don't know if that would have been the case in my school actually. I never looked into it, but I was like, no, like I'm gonna have my time out of my career taken. Like, no. But it's just like it was one pink tax or the other, you know what I mean? Stay at school and feel like I can never really live up to the standard I would have wanted for myself at school, or like take semester off, year off, take time out of my life because of like this traumatic experience. It's like it was either way, like time was going to be stolen from me out of my experience because of what a man decided to do. Like it's so irritating. Meanwhile, like the people who didn't have that trauma happen in their life were like just going on with their life and just like, all their time and energy was focused on school. You know what I'm saying? And like focusing on like the type of self-development you're supposed to have while you're at college that I didn't really get. You know what I mean? Like the kind of like feeling of like freedom, feeling of being carefree, of exploring like all these different things that like I didn't get because a man decided to be selfish. Like I missed out on those like developmental like times that I worked hard to be there and have that, you know? That's why, of course, it's not just like, well, should they get a punishment for it? That's why people should start to feel the consequences of their actions. Because it's not just it's a bad thing to do, but it's like you've robbed me of like money, the money that I had to spend on therapy out of my own pocket. Like the academic burden of like now it's almost like, you know what I mean? It's like almost like I'm losing out on money that I'm spending on classes because I had plenty of scholarship stuff, but I didn't obviously I still paid a bit, and it's like, I was spending that money to get like a subpar experience of university. Like it was literally a financial toll, mental health toll, time toll, all these different things that stopped me from fleshing my career out. So it's like literally there's like that kind of burden to it. It's not just a, oh, now I'm sad. It's like there's actually a financial setback involved. And it's just, yeah, with every time that we treat survivors like that, we keep reiterating the message that the time of women is not valuable, you know, that our money is not as like our financial situation is not as valuable, our educations are not as valuable, like we're just not as valuable, right? The same time that a man spends for a woman, it's not as valuable, right? That you don't want to waste the time of a man, but a woman's time is fine to waste. So all these little things, not even little things, all these massive things. And like, look how this project has taken me what, 5, 6 months. I'm already getting almost to publishable results that nobody's ever had before. Think if I hadn't had that time robbed of me at university, think of all the amazing things I could have done with that time. All this like sort of like learning energy that I've now unlocked outside of school in a more, in a more emotionally safe environment. Think of all the potential that I wasted at school because I was like I was so unwell, right? And the emotional toll again of that traumatic experience and of going through that experience feeling like my school didn't support me. How like that made me so sick and it made it so I couldn't focus at school. Think how good of a student I could have been at school and think how many good things I could have done like through that university if they had cared. You know what I'm saying? It's like stuff like that. It's like, or I just feel like I didn't get to live up to my potential, but it's like I'm glad because they didn't deserve my potential, honestly. They didn't deserve anything I could have done with my potential, even in a little bit. So I actually feel grateful that I'm doing this outside of school, like genuinely. Okay, this is driving me insane. Why does it feels like it's having like a worse issue each time? Like now all of a sudden it's this massive mess. We're gonna go into the restorative justice thing again, just for another second, okay? They were making it a thing of like we are gonna bring in like some kind of person, some kind of mediator that you're gonna get to speak to this person who hurt you and have a conversation about it. This communities of care thing, I think, is a super important part. Okay, it's about reintegrating into a community that's already in that mentality and that's like centered around that idea. Okay, and there is absolutely nothing about a university like that that's facilitating an environment of a community of care. Okay, responsibility to create safe and healthy communities. But even somebody who is literally already on academic probation could pick up a minor to spend in their room for the weekend. So, what about that is a responsibility to create safe and healthy environments? Obligation for recovery. Are they going to check in with that person over time and make sure that person is sticking to activities, to mentalities, to things that are actually going to facilitate them being different? No. No, they're not. Absolutely not. They're not going to do that. They're going to have you have a conversation with them. You're probably going to sign some document at the end of the day and it's going to move on. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're just going to have you have a conversation with the person. Focus on needs of victims. I don't know. It just like was it really going to be about me and about my trauma, or was it going to be about just sort of pushing us through? That's I just didn't it didn't feel very genuine to me. It felt really almost manipulative to bring that up as an option. Like I know that there's a reality to that being a good thing, but the communities of care part I think is extremely important. It's not restorative justice is not just two people having a conversation about their trauma. Okay, restorative justice is literally a mentality for an entire community to change and for an entire society to have a conversation and create a space where that's actually going to make a lasting impact. It's not just, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's okay. It's you're going to keep checking in and making sure that that person is changing, which absolutely is not going to happen. Even on academic probation, it was the most minor thing and it impacted nothing about this person's situation afterwards. They were at every school event. In fact, this is what's insane is they had us I'm not going to go into it, but literally it impacted zero about this person, the way this person moved through the world after literally being on academic probation. So what on earth was going to make me think that they're actually going to facilitate an environment that was going to supposedly rehabilitate this person into not being a rapist anymore? That wasn't going to happen. So it is not real restorative justice, and it's manipulative to actually bring that up in a Title IX setting, I believe. And this is the thing, obligation to repair harm. How on earth, first of all, there was absolutely zero way this person was going to repair harm to me anyway, because they were deranged, to be honest with you. I'm sorry, this person, literally, there was something really not okay in that situation. I'm not going to go into detail here, but there was really something not okay in that situation, and they were an abuser. But it just felt like they were not going to try to fix anything in the slightest. So I was like, that it's so just completely like false to offer me a restorative justice option in that setting was so manipulative, I think. And look, it would include therapeutic services. Were they going, after we had a conversation, were they going to continuously go to therapy? If so, why aren't people getting that on academic probation? That was my thinking. That was just a wham bam thing. It's on your list. Why don't you force him to go to therapy when he's already on academic probation then and facilitate that community of care? It was just like, you're done. Bye. That's it. So this is my like what was restorative justice going to do? Nothing. Not in that setting. That's not what restorative justice is supposed to be at all. That's false.
All right, I decided to jump back on. I figured out the ChatGPT issue and I think I got it fixed. So I did want to run my thing. The problem I'm having right now is that I think my study is getting to a point where it's like I even thought because I have some people I know that are like I have one person that I know that's a neuroscientist, like or they're like a postdoc doing neuroscience. Like I know people that are neurologists, I know people who are psychiatrists, but I feel like the combination of knowledge now that you would need to understand, like to give me like good feedback is getting a bit complex because what I really want is someone to look at my neural network and be like, okay, is this good? You know what I mean? Like, is this like, are the numbers solid and all these things? But I feel like it's to the point where it's like I would need somebody with a really niche combination of knowledge to look at it and be like, yeah, this looks fine. And I don't know who that would be. I might still reach out to the person that I know. I feel a bit awkward because it's kind of random. Like, okay, um, there's like a connection that I made through like a research assistant position, but it's kind of random. I don't know, like, look at this random thing I made. It feels kind of random because it's also like it feels like a little bit outside the scope of like what I should know, if that makes sense. So it feels like a little bit random to be like, hey, look at this. And it's like, where did this come from and why, you know? So I'm just in a little bit of like a dilemma. Like, I definitely want someone to look at it, but like, who? And is that awkward? You know, like, you need to know like how to code. At this point, you need to know how to code, but not only how to code. You also need to know how to code, but you need to understand neuroscience and like the thresholds and things that I'm doing. You know what I mean? It's like it's really random and niche. So it's like, who do I ask for this? Like it's like really, really random. So that's kind of the struggle I'm having right now of being like, who do I even like reach out to or like who do I speak to be like, oh, is this like solid? Like it's not just about finding someone who knows how to do computational models because there's a lot of different types of computational models, you know. I have a friend who's a physics person and they do computational models of physics, you know. And it's like there's so many different types of computational models. I feel like you need to understand. By the way, this is sex. I wanted to show it so it's not like random. It's this is sex differences and chronic stress effects of memories in rats. So not that exciting. But anyways, but I'm just like, who
Who do I ask? Or do I just, is there just no one to ask at this point and I just have to trust ChatGPT? Okay, I think this one should be good now. There's so many little things that I just want to ask. Is it too rigid, for example? Like, are the numbers too rigid? Like, are they making it so that I would always get this result or something? Or like, is it accurate to what I need? Stuff like that where it's like I wish I had somebody to ask or to look over my work. The other thing I could try to do is like find some random person like at my university that I'm about to go to that like knows this stuff. Who would that be? But also it's like it's really random to just reach out to a stranger and be like, "Hi, I did a project. Do you want to look at it?" And it's like I'm not asking you to collaborate. I'm not like, you know what I mean? It's just like you're a random stranger I've never spoken to before, but I know you do what I'm doing, so can you look at it? It's like just a little bit random or like bizarre. So I just don't know like what to do with this. I guess do I just try to like publish it and wait for the person that like I send it to just like tear it apart? Like what do I do? But it's just a little bit like I don't want to waste anybody's time as well. I could ask like Reddit, but I feel kind of weird putting it on Reddit because it's like I don't want someone to snatch it or something. You know what I mean? Like then people could just take it. Not that I think somebody would per se, but it's like it's a little bit of a risk to just be like, here's my hard work. Like, what do you think of it? So I don't know if I want to do that. I just don't know like what do I do with this because ChatGPT is obviously great, but I think like there's obviously limitations. Oh, why did it do this? Okay, I mean that's cool that it showed me this. So this is how it changed over. So like it started here after they escaped, and in that first like quote unquote hour period, it went down to like 1.3, and then it went down to baseline after that in the next like 20 minutes. So now I'm very curious to see what's going to happen by the end of the 10th hour. How many sharp wave ripples are the other group going to have? This has just been so niche. Like it's just too niche now. Do you ask a trauma expert? Do you ask computation? One time when I was starting this project, ChatGPT asked me something. It was like, is this a dissociation model? Is this an encoding model? Is this a blank model? And it was like, or no, no, no. That was it did ask me that, but it also told me that I had to make sure that I wrote it well because if not, then the computational model people would be confused, or the psychology people would be confused, or the neuroscience people would be confused, right? So it's like now I'm in this awkward spot where it's like, okay, but who do I ask? Do I ask a trauma expert because then they can see if the acetylcholine is fine? Do I ask somebody who knows about place cells because then they can see that element? Do I ask somebody who does computational like coding stuff, but then they don't really understand who do I ask? Is like the awkward spot that I found myself in with this random project. Or do I have multiple people look at it? This is a question that only can be answered by tarot cards at the end of the day because nobody can give me an answer except my tarot cards. So I might ask my tarot cards at some point in time. That's what tarot cards are good for. It's when you have that random kind of question that nobody could give you an answer to. That's when you pull the tarot cards out. This has been such a like my own little thing. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like I've like clumped myself into like a niche almost. Like I made my own random niche just now. Not actually, because there's plenty of studies like you know what I'm saying, but it's not like a niche that doesn't exist anywhere else. But it's like it's not it's like it's a very specific thing. Like you know what I mean? Like it's like an overlap of many different things that are really niche. And so it's like I don't know, it's like a little bit of a weird spot for me. But it's like exactly what I wanted to do. You know what I mean? That's the cool thing about just following like your vision is that you just find yourself in like a random niche. I'm so curious to see how the many sharpwave ripples are going to be in the high arousal group. Like this is really exciting to me right now. It's interesting that it kind of dipped up a little bit, but that's random. I'm also wondering, did it run the memories though? Because I'm feeling like it didn't. I think that's going to be the next part for me, like tomorrow. Because I think now I feel like I kind of got like the ACH stuff together. I feel like at this point it's not even caring about the actual memories anymore, just about the ACH. You know what I mean? Like I don't see, oh wait, it does say here what, where, and source. So I guess it's still encoding memories, but I'm just curious, like what is it encoding? Which is the next step, is making the code so that I can actually see what they're remembering. Okay, look, so the medium group had 15, which is more than before they were getting like 8 maybe. So it's about 2 times as much, which makes sense because they had like another hour to code at that same low amount. I'm also curious why this is at like almost 1.2 when I don't know that it should be. I think they went right back down to baseline, so I don't know why it's at 1.2 per se, but that might just be me not remembering the numbers that well. But this is getting really serious, which is kind of the weird thing. Like, I didn't expect actually, well, I don't know if I expected to get here or not, honestly. Obviously, I really, really wanted to, but I don't know. I think I spent so much of the last few months in a state of just stress and anxiety. Like, am I going to do this? And then today I was walking around in such mental peace because, like, I did it, because yesterday I got my first sharp wave, like, set of sharp wave ripples. Like, the 8 medium group had 8, the other group had 0. So I felt like genuine emotional and mental relief. Because from here, it's just getting more of the numbers. You know what I mean? Like from here, it's just like, okay, you did it. Like it's just improving it. So I already have like the numbers. So this is gonna happen. It's just making sure that everything is fine, which is pretty insane. Like I'm pretty shocked at myself that I actually did it and this didn't just become like a failure. But I guess I wasn't gonna let myself like make it a failure. I think my determination was too strong. Like I was too determined for it to have flopped. This is insane. Like if I could have shown myself is this to myself like 5 months ago, she would be so impressed. That's the only person I try to impress is my past self. It's so good to be like, I talked in another video how basically every once in a while, I've done this ever since I was going through a really, 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 really difficult mental health period that I was trying to get out of. I basically started to send myself, like, when I was in a good place emotionally, I would send, like, almost like a little mental picture to myself who was, like, in a bad state of mind. So then over time, when I was in a bad state of mind, I would it was almost like I already knew that my future self was sending me a positive telepathic message. So I could already trust that my future self was in a good place, right? And then over time, it became like this practice where every time I was like, I did something that I set out to do, I send that message back to myself, like, yes, you did it, right? So like, okay, I was like, am I ever gonna get a flat? Like I was really stuck, like trying to figure out how to get a flat here in London. And then I finally got a flat, right? So I sent myself a mental picture that yes, I did get the flat. I would go sending myself these little mental pictures over time to show my past self that like I have the things that she wanted so that like when I'm in a bad state of mind or when I'm doubting, I can just trust that my future self is sending me like a message that I did it, right? It's silly, but it's like it helped me a lot. And so today I was like, I sent myself this mental picture to me in the past of like, yes, you did it. You got it done. You know what I mean? It's like my little practice. Like I always send myself that little picture when I get something. Oh, 6 sharp wave ripples. Okay. 6 sharp wave ripples they had in the second hour, meaning they were remembered over time. This is pretty cool. What's going to happen next is that I'm going to basically, okay, I'm basically going to I need to figure out the actual memory part now. I have 2 days till my birthday. I want this done by my birthday. So I have like 2 days. I don't know if it'll get done in 2 days, but it should be pretty much done in 2 days. If it's not perfect, that's fine. But basically, what I want next is to see, like, the next question is, what do these memories look like? You know what I mean? Like, what's actually consolidating? That's a bit hard. That's going to take quite some thinking from me tomorrow, I think. But I'm moving pretty quick at this point. Like, I'm moving really, really fast. So I have to not, I have to trust that my future self is sending me a picture of me figuring that out. You know what I mean? My future self did it, and my future self is sending me the picture that I got that piece of the puzzle together? So it's gonna happen. But I did it. Okay, I'm gonna take a shower and wash the oil out of my hair. I'm gonna clean. I'm gonna let these 12 rats start to like show themselves and see what happened. But yeah, the next step is just to see like what do these memories actually look like, and then we're in a really good place and we can start writing this paper. It's just that I'm worried, like I'm really worried about these codes and like are they fine? I wish I had someone to ask so bad so they could look at it and be like, yes, this is good. Like, no, it's not too rigid, whatever. Because who knows? Like, ChatGPT could do something wrong. I have another person that I know was my like a family friend from when I was growing up, and I was telling my dad I was working on this, and he said that this family friend is a neuroscientist, or they were. I think they're retired now. And he was like, maybe you could send it to him, like your paper when it's done, so he can look over it. I don't know how much he knows about computational modeling, so I feel like I'll see, but that's the thing is that my question isn't about the mechanisms. It's actually about whether my code is fine. Like, is my code too rigid? You get me? Like, or is it okay? Like, am I forcing any result? Is there anything that's like kind of off or like not right? What I'm gonna might get like ChatGPT to do is I'm gonna take my most successful code so far and I'm gonna ask it to like explain the code back to me in like normal words. You know what I mean? Like tell me everything in the most like simple language you can that is meant to happen in this code, or like what do you expect to happen? Like you know what I'm saying? Like give me like the rundown. And then I'm gonna see if there's anything that I'm like, oh no, that shouldn't be happening. So like for example, I had to mess around with it in this one to make sure that it didn't like I was like, oh, I want 10 hours. But it was basically stretching the same numbers over the 10 hours instead of like sort of making the slope go down. So yeah, I just want to make sure everything's okay. I want to make sure that all the pieces, like, okay, all of the little, this is actually good to say it out loud so I can actually get the list. Like, let's actually put this, I'm gonna write it here, even though this isn't the place where it should go, just to have like a little bit of something to look at tomorrow. Okay, I want like each sort of like episode, and then like the ACH should actually just be going to like a value, sort of. So this should be certain, almost like certain triggers, maybe. Um, Triggers for high ACH as well. I just want to make sure everything is like loose but tight at the same time. You know what I mean? Like loose enough that I'm getting a bit of variety. Obviously, I'm already getting variety in these right now because, for example, this one, the medium group, this one ran 15, but this one ran 18. So obviously, I'm getting some variety in terms of something, but I just want to make sure because I don't want, for example, like in real life, every single rat wouldn't have the same experience. So that's why I want to make sure everything's okay. So, like for example, like when they hit the trigger, basically like it should be within a range of ACH that's like sort of almost like realistic to the experiment. Like let's say like the average of the ACH they hit was 193, so maybe they should be falling within the range of like 180 to like 200, you know, instead of being like, okay, everyone's getting the same thing. ChatGPT already incorporated something called jitters, which is that essentially. So I think I might just keep it at that because obviously it seems to be working out fine. But let me just make sure that jitters are doing that. Like, wait, I want to show off. Okay, this is so random. I want to show off my little cousin from Brazil. She's not little anymore though. She's already like I think she's 18 already. Yeah, she's 18. She taught herself English herself as a child. Her English is probably better than my Portuguese, no lie. She taught it to herself, dude. Something is in our DNA, no lie. Okay, that was off topic, but it's just like I just wanted to show her off for a minute because literally when I would go back and speak to her, I'm like, what on earth? Like, how are you literally learning English completely just by yourself? She just like talks to people on the internet too. Like she always has had like online friends and stuff. She's into gaming. So she literally just taught herself English, which is insane. I need to start speaking to random like I need to make online Brazilian friends. I've been speaking to my I don't know what he is cousin. He's like second cousin once removed, something like that. We FaceTime sometimes and like we'll practice English. You practice English, I practice Portuguese. His English is great too. My Portuguese is fine, but we do practice and we'll just have like a long conversation about life, but I need to like expand. Okay, I just need to make sure that's fine. And then what we need to focus on tomorrow is probably how do we see the memories also? I already ran one where you could see memory traces, which is pretty cool, but I haven't run one where you can see what the memories that were consolidated. And I'm wondering if that will be more of a tricky thing. And then I also have a lot of questions I need to answer myself about arousal and memory. I might have to cut some of this out, but just mention it. But for example, like the most arousing thing in your life, like whatever the most arousing thing is in like your memory, usually you'll remember that. This was like, okay, I really want to make a video one day because I've learned so much on almost like the neurobiology of the Kavanaugh trial because some of the things that they talked about, like, or some of the things that they picked at are not like scientifically, like there's reasoning behind that. So, for example, I was reading about how I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name. I was thinking about okay, so basically Christine Blasey, I think that was her name. So she one of the things that they picked at, I remember all the way back from high school and how much this even impacted me in high school, just as a woman. But one of the big things that they talked about is like, well, you remember the rape, but you don't remember the things around it. But what I learned recently, we're pulling the paper out, okay? I want this to stick with everybody's mind so nobody ever asks a stupid question again, and I want everybody to remember it, okay? Actually, let's just head into my liter actually no. It is in my literature review, but I'm going to show you from the actual paper. I'm going to show you what the paper is, and then I'm going to show you what I learned. Okay, this is the paper. It's called Emotional Arousal and Memory Binding, an Object-Based Framework. Okay, let's go into my literature review so I can see my actual highlights. Everybody listen right now. Okay, everybody listen up hard. Listen up and remember this so you never ask a stupid question and you never think the stupid thing. Okay, why do you remember the trauma, but you don't remember the stuff around it? Okay. Basically, the way memory works is that you have, okay, so when we're learning things, basically our memory starts to bind certain elements of an event together in our memory. So, for example, when you're remembering your house, you don't just remember like door, pillow, things like that. You remember something integrated into a story, right? You remember like I walked into the house and when I walked into the house, I'm happy or like when you think of your house, you feel happy because you have like happiness binded to the memory of your house, right? Things just sort of almost come into conjunction together so that you remember things in like a story, right? Now, this is what's interesting, okay? Is that usually when something is arousing, okay, so that means that it's calling your attention. Basically, the things that are more arousing usually attract our attention more, right? So, let's say like you're walking down the street, it's just a normal day, and like a clown pops out, and he's like a big old clown with like a red nose. You're gonna look around and you're like, you know what? You're gonna be like, whoa, that's crazy, and that's gonna attract your attention, right? And the things that are arousing basically have higher priority in terms of whether they'll be remembered or not. That's the first thing. So you're more likely to remember the clown that you saw than you were to remember the fact that like a blue car drove by because the blue car is not really that exciting. That's not like that interesting to you. Your attention is on the clown, right? And you're going to walk around and be like, why did I see a clown yesterday? That was really random. Okay. So reports of traumatic events remembered in an overly general fashion. So like that, right? I remember I was raped, but I don't remember the fact that there was like a blue picture on the wall of the room I was raped in. Sorry to be triggering for anybody. But okay, that's just like a random example, right? Reports of traumatic events remembered in an overly general fashion without contextual detail suggest that highly emotionally charged elements may be vividly remembered, but not associated with one another in a coherent fashion. According to Easterbrook's Q utilization hypothesis, emotional arousal leads to narrowing of attention that benefits central information at the cost of peripheral information. So if something is super duper stressful, you are 100% more likely to tune into that and forget like just everything else around you. It's almost like a laser vision on the traumatic thing. Okay. Listen to this. I think this one is pretty interesting. People typically expand the boundaries of pictures and remembering them. So when you're remembering the street, you usually remember almost like a massive, like a bigger view of the street. But highly anxious participants are less likely to expand the boundary of aversive pictures in memory, whereas anxiety level does not influence boundary extension for normal, neutral, or pleasant pictures. So usually instead of having a really big picture of something that happened, people who are anxious in general, not trauma specific, but people who are anxious are actually more likely to remember like a small little version, like a smaller version of a picture essentially that happened to them. Okay. So listen to this. Failing to remember that there is a bookcase behind a nude person in a photograph might result from failing to bind that contextual detail to the arousing element in the scene or from failing to remember the book book care itself. The most important thing becomes so important that you are less likely to bind the more neutral images around it. Okay, so if you're seeing a naked person in your room, which okay, as any survivor, like that's irrelevant. I think that's a really relevant example, right? That's so arousing, as in that's so attention calling that the things around it are less likely to bind to it. You're less likely to get a big picture with all these little details because you're like, whoa, that's shocking. So the things around it are not as likely to bind to it. So it would make 100% sense biologically for someone to remember that they were raped, but not to remember that like you know, oh, the door was open, stuff like that. That is how the neuroscience actually genuinely works. Okay, so this is how we're basically coded to work. Okay, people notice threatening stimuli such as angry faces or snakes more quickly than they notice other types of stimuli, and people with specific phobias show an especially large detection advantage for the animal they fear. So of all the things you could have attention to, the more scary thing is going to be the thing in your attention more. Okay, eye tracking studies reveal that people initially, I don't know how to say this word, saccade towards emotional pictures, especially arousing negative ones, more often than they do towards neutral pictures, and spend more time looking at emotional pictures. So if something's more like emotionally impactful or something is scarier, you're more likely to have spend that conscious time and energy looking at that or focusing on that. Okay. So in a study, basically, if they showed words that were like they had some taboo element, actually in the study that I think this is the study that they were referencing in this piece that I wrote down, but they had one study where they had these little pieces of words, and some of the words had like bad words and things like that in them. So usually after we are remembering something, we have like a period of time where we're not necessarily conscious of things going we have these little blinks and periods between attention, right? So but emotionally arousing words, so things that attract a lot of attention like that or that have a lot of emotional sort of impact are more likely to be reported when they appear during an attentional blink period than neutral words are. And the effect is due to the word's arousal level rather than to their valence or distinctiveness. Thus, emotionally arousing stimuli are more likely than other stimuli to make it beyond the fleeting perceptual representation stage when competing with other stimuli for processing resources. So, emotionally arousing stimuli are less subject to the attentional blink than our neutral stimuli, suggesting that the former are more likely to make the transition from perception to working memory, both when composed of one feature and when they're composed of multiple features. So basically, even in those periods of time where like your brain stops sort of process, like it has almost these little blinks where usually you wouldn't remember things happening in the blinks, and they're usually like milliseconds long. But if something is extremely emotionally arousing, so it's like a bad word, something really like impactful, it's actually more likely to even make it through or be remembered even through that little piece of moment where you technically your attention isn't on things. I don't know if that really makes sense or if I'm explaining that great, but it's really that impactful. Like if something is really arousing, we are meant to sort of remember that more than things that aren't really that important to us. So, for example, the way a room looks is significantly less important than somebody attacking you. Okay, so it makes sense to not remember certain things. What were they wearing? Okay, I think that's a little bit less important than the fact that you're being attacked. So that's obviously going to make it through things like the attentional blink or whatever, where you're going to remember those more. Okay. But this is the also the interesting part to my study. So I'm going to share it because this is what I find really so just something I found really impactful. So they did another study in which participants watched short film clips without a soundtrack as they listened to lists of words that also revealed arousal-based impairments. So participants' later word film association memory was worse for words heard during the highly arousing films, so depicting an amputation or self-mutilation, than for words heard during non-arousing, neutral, or positive films. But the second most arousing film clips depicting either a car chase or downhill ski racing yielded better word film associations than control films. So what that means, right? Basically, this is what I'm actually looking at in my study. So it is true that if something is emotionally arousing, like really impactful, you're more likely to remember it, right? But if something is too arousing, something is super duper stressful to look at, you're less likely to remember to have binded memories within that frame. So for example,
In the clips where people were watching movies that literally had like amputation, self-mutilation, so super duper like, whoa, what's going on kind of things, they had a much harder time remembering. So basically, they had those movie clips sound off, and they were listing words to the people in those studies. Okay, so basically, what was happening is that people were watching those movies that had amputations, mutilation, they were significantly less likely to remember the words that people were telling them, right? Because obviously you're like, oh my God, somebody's being amputated. You're not like binding. That's the most arousing thing. Your brain is prioritizing that over the words that it's hearing, right? But in the second most arousing clip, so that's just a clip that had like a car chase or downhill ski racing. Actually, that was when people had the best memory. So when something is like, oh, whoa, like you're alert, but you're not, you're not bored. You're not in the state of trauma. You're just alert. You're just having a normal time. Basically, that made the best memories, right? But if something is too stressful, so something is traumatic, little bits like basically words and the other pieces of information that are less important, you're less likely to remember those kinds of things in conjunction or just have basically. So they said in the paper that one possible explanation is that basically the effects of the film on word film associations were influenced by ease of making associations with the film topic as well as by how arousing they were. So if they were too stressful, it was really hard for people to make those associations with that. And here's the last thing, because a lot of people be like, well, why didn't you remember it right away? Why didn't you do something right away? There's a lot of different papers that go into that. But look at this one. So when people had low arousal word number pair, so that's just like if someone's just giving you words like apple, like tree, combined with the number 5 or 6, things that are very boring, basically right, they were able to remember right away like 50% of those combinations, so a good amount of those combinations. But a week later, they didn't remember anything at all. Like nothing of that really stuck with them. Meanwhile, for the high arousal ones, so basically they had like, for example, the F word 3, bad word 7. Immediately they could only actually remember 10% because I guess the arousal was too high. But a week later, they were actually able to remember 40%. So right away, the memory was impacted, but over time, they were actually better able to remember it. So it's these kinds of things that like I think that people should know because they speak so heavily to questions like that. Why didn't you remember right away? Why didn't you remember, like, for example, that person, oh, you got it wrong. They weren't wearing brown shoes, they were wearing red shoes. Okay, well, if you're being if you were being sexually assaulted, I don't think you're that focused on the shoes. I think you're focused on the fact that you're being sexually assaulted. And there's actual neuroscience to back up why it happens like that. So it's not fake, it's not people lying. It's actually how the neuroscience works. I'm going to link the video up here. I've made a big folder that I've been adding to of just evidence for survivors. These are texts that people can read just for themselves. Honestly, stick it into ChatGPT, whatever, or and have it explained to you if you're not a very sciencey person, or if you're somebody who actually works with survivors, like you're like expert witness or something. I've just found so many great resources trying to get this project together, and like I highly recommend reading it. For me as a survivor, doing the science has been so validating, but also so frustrating because I'm like, wow, people in positions of power to actually like help, to actually create these sort of decisions for survivors know nothing about trauma. And they need to know stuff like this because they need to stop asking stupid questions like, why didn't you remember that? Like, why didn't you remember that they were wearing a green shirt and you said they were wearing a blue shirt? Please stop asking stupid questions and go actually educate yourself on the thing that you're supposed to be focusing on every single day. This is the thing that gets me about trials like that. Speaking from my own personal experience, it's like, in what other situation would you want someone who's a complete non-expert on the experience that you're having to be making massive decisions over your experience, right? People who are in positions to make these sort of justice sort of oriented decisions for survivors, who are people who are dealing with the most severe sort of like ramifications of trauma and of stress, they should know, they should be highly educated about trauma because you're literally dealing with that's like, for example, let's say, oh, I'm a biologist, I'm going to go work on a frog related project, but you've never read about frogs before. What makes you any qualified at all to go work with frogs? You are not qualified. So, in what other situation would we allow somebody who's completely and not expert, has read nothing, and it just has no sort of knowledge about the thing that they're working with to do the job. That's like, do you want a lawyer who's never read about law before? No, obviously not. Do you want like a doctor who has never read about medicine before? You don't. So why would you want someone dealing with survivors every single day who doesn't know anything about survivors, doesn't know anything about trauma? I don't. That was the situation, but I don't want that. I don't think anybody should.
Okay, I actually got results last night. I want to show, but for some reason the sound didn't save on my audio. But first of all, I just want to mention something sentimental because these are also little personal diaries for me of like this process that has been so personal to me. But I was really reflecting on how much I've changed over the course of this project, and I feel like my energy from like the first few videos to now, like, I feel like the difference in terms of my confidence levels, the way that I speak, like the way that even I look, my hair has grown out a lot. I don't know. It's just been kind of like such a fun process to see myself grow. And I feel like I really have like grown back into myself or like come into my own voice so much over the course of this project and felt so much better about myself and like this ownership over my experience and this ownership over like over space as well. So yeah, it's been, I feel like I've been like I'm seeing myself starting to glow more as I've just feeling like I'm just healing from this um feeling of invalidation. And I feel like even the first video I actually have on this playlist where I'm talking about trauma, I was actually really afraid to even like put that up because I still had this feeling in the back of my head, like what if I'm lying, and like what if I'm lying about my trauma. And I actually spoke in that video about feeling like I was still having a difficult time wrapping my head around the title of survivor. And I think that that's because because I felt so invalidated in so many different like places. I think I was never able to feel like 100% comfortable in owning that title of like I survived something hard because I felt so gaslit and I had people telling me I was confabulating things to get back with my crush. And then I went into psychology and the stupid fantasy model people who are all men, all white men who don't know anything about anything and probably have never interacted with the world in a deeper way, to be honest. We're all saying, you know, oh, people are fantasy prone, all this stuff. And I felt like I just couldn't take that, like this ownership over my own trauma. Like, yes, that happened to you and like you really survived and you really did it and like you're okay. And also I was so gaslit in the situation as well that I really struggled to, even though I was struggling mentally so much from the PTSD, like I could never feel like I could take that space as a survivor and be like, my experience is real and like I can really heal from it. And I feel like the last few months have been so validating and so healing. And like you can see me over the course of the entire playlist series, just the way that I'm speaking is so different. And the way that I'm navigating this experience has been so different. And I'm really, truly grateful for the science. And like science has really saved me in a way that I didn't know that I would be saved. And I didn't know how badly I needed science at all. I was never a scientist, and it's just been so healing for me to become a scientist and take that sort of like ownership over my experience and my voice. So with that in mind, I'm going to jump into those results from yesterday because the audio didn't actually save for some reason. So I'll just show you the video that I took of my results. All right, so I showed this earlier in the video, but basically just to sort of like explain what this is. This was the chemical that was going up in rats. Actually, this is not like a bad chemical. It's just a chemical that makes us puts us in a state of arousal so that we're learning throughout the day, and then it usually goes down at like certain times of the day so that we can consolidate those memories. But in the rats that went through inescapable stress, this chemical was going up to like a really, really high, basically like a really, really high amount compared to the other rats. And then what was happening is that after they left the stressor, that chemical like swooped up super duper duper high. Meanwhile, with the other rats, who had just gone through like almost like play that was like it wasn't really like super amazing play, but it was just normal, and they left the situation and then immediately were fine. Basically, like that chemical was from the minute that the rats basically left the stressor in these medium arousal rats, so the rats that had like almost more of like a just like a weird playtime. They from the beginning they were below this baseline that actually allowed them to immediately start consolidating memories. So they were already like relaxed from the get-go and ready to consolidate memories. Meanwhile, the stress
Meanwhile, the rats that were in high stress, basically their stress chemical, like basically that chemical went up way, way, way high to 1.9. And then it took a really, really long time. It was going down. And actually in the study, the real study actually ended here in like my neural network stretched it to 5 hours because my neural network, like it's weaker than a real brain. So it took more time to actually let things consolidate. But it stretched to the same equivalent amount. But basically, this was actually where the study ended, and like after the first hour. And in these rats that had high stress, actually at the end of the first hour, that chemical had never even gone down to baseline still. Like by the end of the experiment, the acetylcholine was actually still above baseline for the rats. Meanwhile, the other rats that hadn't gone through stress, they were sort of below baseline the whole time. Meaning that those medium arousal rats were able to consolidate memories the full time. Meanwhile, while the acetylcholine rats, the first hour, they were never at the point where they could start producing sharp wave ripples. Those sharp wave ripples are basically the ripples that make us start like have memories, like consolidate memories. So I basically, even though both of the studies ended here, I basically made it almost like an artificial second hour. So okay, what happens in another hour when the acetylcholine and high stress rats actually goes all the way down below baseline? That wasn't in the study, the first study, but I kind of like made it to see what would happen after over time. Like, would they finally start to consolidate memories by producing sharp wave ripples? And what I found was that, look at this. So it's a bit cut off here, but you can see, so all of the rats here. So the medium rats, so the medium rats, basically, they were consolidating for a much larger time. Like they immediately were able to have sharp wave ripples from the beginning. So they were able to start making memories from the beginning. Like they never had an impact in their memory. Meanwhile, actually, you could see in the beginning of the video that the rats in high stress, in the first hour, they literally never got low enough to start making sharp wave ripples at all. So they had not a single chance to make a memory. Meanwhile, once you extended it, and basically the stress went down to a normal baseline again, finally they could start making memories and consolidating memories again. So basically what that means is that, for example, in situations of people with recovered memories, such as myself, you literally, while that stress level is high, while that arousal level is high, it's too high to the point that it's suppressing your ability to produce sharp wave ripples. And so you can't start consolidating memories until the acetylcholine goes down far enough to produce sharp wave ripples. As I explained by the fact that I was explaining the amount of intense stress in my life, right? So that's what I was trying to say when I told people my trauma, okay, in context, in all sorts of different contexts, okay? So was I lying? No, I was freaking not. There we go, okay? Basically, you cannot start to recover memories, consolidate memories until the acetylcholine level goes down far enough for you to produce sharp wave ripples. And there you go. I'm not a freaking liar.